Hello everyone and welcome back once again. This is your history teacher here, and this time I'm here with the second part of the chapter number 2 NCERT grade 7, that is New Kings and Kingdoms. Students, as in the first part of this chapter, we learned and discussed the emergence of the new dynasties, means that how new dynasty emerged during 7th and the 12th centuries. And we also learn and discuss about the administration of these kingdoms that emerged during 7th and 12th centuries. And we also learn and discuss about the Kannauj triangle, that how the three parties involved continuously in wars over this prized area, that is Kannauj. And we also learned that during that time, the temples were the main attraction point. And through constructions, kings usually show their prosperity, their power. That's why Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni of Afghanistan raided India from 997 to 1030 and extended control over the part of Central Asia. Now students, in this second part, we will learn and discuss basically about the Cholas. So let's continue the chapter. Students, now coming on towards the South India, that forms the basis of the medieval India or the small kingdom during this time. Students, as you can see here the heading, the Cholas. Students, Chola kingdoms is one of the most important kingdom of that towns from South India. And Cholas were popular because of two things. First of all, the unique expedition that they took off. As a result, they were popular in the Southeast Asia. And the second important reason was the fine architectural marvels, mainly made of bronze. And the bronze images were mainly the deities, and they were also the common man and the devotees that were made of bronze. And these bronze sculptures were considered as the finest sculpture in the world. Students, as you can see here in this map, up to the orange patches, the Cholas kingdoms mainly extended over up to the orange patches over here in this map. And the lining structure that you see over here is the fluctuating border of the Cholas empire. Now let's discuss from Urayur to Thanjavur. Students, Urayur was the capital of Cholas that time. Students, now in this section we will learn that how did the Cholas rise to power. Students, that time there was a minor chief family in South India that was known as Mutaryar. And students, these Mutaryar families were basically the subordinates or Samantas or the Pallava kings of Kanchipuram. And these Mutaryars extend their power up to the Kaveri delta. But students, in the middle of the 9th century, there was a famous Chola ruler named Vijayalaya who captured this Kaveri delta area from Mutaryar chief family and built there a town named Thanjavur and a temple for goddesses Nishumbu Bhasudini. And that's how Vijayalaya extended his power from Urayur to up to the Thanjavur. Students, not only Vijayalaya, in fact, the successor of the Vijayalaya also conquered many neighboring regions and the kingdoms, and that's how they increased their size and the powers of the Chola kingdom. And they basically increased their kingdom up to the Pandyans and the Pallavas territories. And these two, Pandyan and Pallavas, were also the famous dynasties of medieval period in the south and north. And students, meanwhile, Raja I, one of the most powerful ruler of the Chola dynasty, became king in 985, and he expanded his empire up to most of the areas of the South India and also reorganized his administration of the empire. Students, after Raja I, his son Rajendra I continued the policy of his father Raja and raided up to the Ganga Valley, Sri Lanka and the countries of the Southeast Asia and developing a navy for overall these expeditions, as all these areas, Ganga Valley, Sri Lanka, and the other countries of Southeast Asia, were far from the seas. That's why Rajendra first developed a well navy expedition over there in these countries, and that's how he established his empire over there. Students, as I said earlier also, that Chola Empire were mainly known for its splendid temples and bronze sculpture. So in this section we will learn about these splendid temples and bronze sculpture that were basically belongs to the Cholas dynasty. Most of the big temples of Thanjavur and Gangai Konda Cholapuram were basically built by Raja and his son Rajendra. And Chola temples often became the nuclei of settlements, means all the activities were basically carried out around temples. And that time temples were also endowed, means donated with land by the rulers as well as many other rich influential family members. And whatever the production of these lands that were endowed by rulers and as well as the other rich influential families went into maintaining all the specialists who work at the temple and very often live near it, like priests, garland makers, cooks, sweeper, musician, dancers, means all these persons basically live around the area of the temples, and the production of the land that endowed by the rulers were used to maintain all these specialists over there. Students, as you can see here in this figure, this is the famous temple of Cholas dynasty, Gangai Konda Cholapuram. Students, as I said, that times temples were not only the places of the worship. In fact, all the major activities of the kingdoms like festival celebrations, gatherings, ceremonies were basically happened around the temples. That's why temples were also called the hub of economic, social and cultural life. And students, among us the craft associated with the temples, the making of bronze images was the most distinctive feature of Chola's empire. And Chola's bronze image considered among the finest in the world, as you can see here in this figure. And student, basically these sculpture or images were of deities, and sometimes these images were made of devotees as well. Now let's move on towards the next slide. Agriculture and irrigation. Students, as we discussed that most of the achievements of the Cholas dynasty were possible just because of the new developments that they use in their agriculture. Students, river Kaveri here in the South India during the Cholas empire branched off or divide off into several small tributaries before emptying into the Bay of Bengal. And these small channels overflow frequently, and when they overflow frequently they deposit a fertile soil on their banks, and this fertile soil helps in the development of the agriculture or helps in the production in agriculture. And students, water from these channels were also provides the necessary moisture for the agricultures, and particularly for the cultivation of the rice, as rice is well grown in the moisture land. So here in this area, means to say in Chola kingdoms, there was a major production of rice that time. And students, agriculture was not only developed in the Cholas kingdoms, in fact it developed earlier in the other part of the Tamil Nadu as well, and it was only the 5th or 6th century that this area was opened up for the large scale cultivation of crops. Now students, let's discuss that what were the major developed techniques that they were basically used in agriculture. Students, that time forests had to be cleared in some regions and the land had to be leveled in other areas for the cultivation of crops. And in the delta regions, embankments had to be built in order to prevent flooding, and canals had to be constructed to carry water up to the fields for irrigation. And in many areas of the Chola kingdoms, Basically, two crops were grown in a year, and in many cases, it was necessary for them to water crops artificially, means to say through the canals. And Cholas use a variety of methods for irrigation. In some areas, they dug wells, and in the other places, huge tanks were constructed to collect rainwater as well. And students, as you all know, that irrigation works require planning, organizing, labor, and resources. So, Cholas maintain these works and decide on how water is to be shared up to the fields. And students, through Cholas, many of the new rulers as well as many peoples living in the villages took an active interest in these activities. And that's how the agriculture highly developed during Cholas. Now students, now let's discuss how the Cholas administered their empire, or how was the administration organized by the Cholas. Students, as we discussed in the earlier slide, that all the various methods that Cholas were used to took in order to make a high production in agriculture. And with the spread of the irrigation in agriculture led to the prosperity of settlement of the peasants, and these were known as Ur. Means Ur were basically a group of peasants who makes settlements over there in a particular area, and that area that they termed as villages. And group of such villages formed larger units known as Nadu. And these village council and the Nadu performed several administrative functions, including dispensing justice and collecting taxes from that places. And students, that time there was a rich peasant caste named Vellala. These Vellala caste rich peasant exercised considerable control over the affairs of the Nadu, means to say the Vellala caste peoples time to time check the functions of the Nadus and these village councils under the supervision of the central Chola government. Students, that time Brahmins received a large number of land grants that were also known as Brahmadeya, and that's how there were emergence of a large number of Brahmin settlement in the Kaveri valley. And all these land grants and or Brahmadeya was looked after by an assembly or sabha of Brahmins landholders who worked very efficiently and administer all these land grants. And their decisions, means the prominent Brahmins decisions, were recorded in detail in the inscription and often sometime on the stone walls of temples. And during Chola dynasties, Chola kings gave some rich land owners some titles like Muvindavilan or Arayar. Muvindavilan means a villain or peasant serving three kings. Means a peasant who served three kings at a time. And Arayar means to say a chief. So that time Chola kings gave some rich landowners some big titles like these, Muvindavilan and Arayar. Arayar is mark of respect and entrusted towards them with important offices of the state at the center. Students, during Cholas, organization of traders that were basically known as anagrams that time, and these anagrams occasionally performed as the administrative functions in the towns. And students, archaeologists found such an inscription from Uttaramerur in Chingleput district of Tamil Nadu that provide detail of the way in which these anagrams were organized. And students, these anagrams also had separate committee to look after the irrigation works, gardens, temples, etc. in these areas during that time. And students, that time basically these associations were formed through a kind of ritual, means name of all the eligible members of the committees were written on a small tickets or on a leaf palm. Then these tickets were put on an earthenware pot from which a young boy was asked to take out of the ticket, and then one by one for each committee. And students, that's how the members of the committee was appointed that time. Now students, that's all about your chapter number 2, and with this your chapter number 2 is completed here. Now I will be come back soon with another chapter. Till then, stay home, stay safe, stay healthy.